Hello, I'm Bob Dickinson of Innovice, and you're looking at Innovice's InfoSWM 2D, our 2D tutorial. I'm going to talk about infiltration surfaces on InfoSWM 2D, which are exactly the same as the infiltration surfaces on ICM 2D, InfoWorks ICM 2D. You define the infiltration surfaces in the InfoSWM 2D menu, infiltration surfaces. You have three options. Basically, you have fixed infiltration, Horton infiltration, and constant. Fixed just is a constant, or rather is a fixed variable loss of the rainfall. So if you have rainfall and you said fixed is 10%, 10% of the rainfall ends up as fixed. Horton is more dynamic. It uses max, min, and decay to model the infiltration over the 2D mesh. And constant is just a constant inches per hour or millimeters per hour over the simulation. So the way you define that is you can have it two different ways. You can have infiltration surface for the whole simulation polygon. So for example, for the whole polygon, I'm using a rainfall ID of 1 and an infiltration surface of HS. And applies, so the rainfall applies over the whole 2D mesh, and then you have infiltration occurring over the whole 2D mesh with Horton. As an alternative, you can have a fixed or a separate infiltration surface. So for example, I have fixed over here, which is just this little purple area, and it uses the fixed infiltration surface. And then we have a constant infiltration surface here. Alright, so what this allows you to do is when you run the model, it'll calculate the flow over the 2D mesh, rainfall on the 2D mesh, but it will also will have infiltration. So you can look at a little bit of what happens in the model by looking at the flows using the report manager. So here we have a point graph here where we can see the 2D inflow. There's no 2D inflow because there's no manhole. 2D depth, and the 2D depth goes down to 0 because we have infiltration occurring. The same thing at the other point graph here. No inflow, but we can look at the 2D depth over time. And then at the other point down here, again we have no inflow, but we can look at the depth over time. So this allows us to have infiltration occurring over the simulation. So let's look at a junction graph that has both of those occurring. So now we look at the 2D depth here, and you can see their 2D depth, so the flow comes out of the manhole to the mesh. Here we have inflow, and that's inflow coming from the 2D mesh to the manhole. Alright, this is a little bit about the infiltration surfaces inside of InfoSWM 2D. Again, in summary, there's three types of surfaces: Horton, constant, and fixed, and it applies over the whole simulation. So if we look at the maximum display depth over the whole simulation, we can see that there's a lot of flooding along these along the mesh here. So thank you for listening, and I hope you learned a little bit about the infiltration surfaces in InfoSWM 2D.